I'm standing on a stage right now, accepting an award I never thought I'd deserve. The lights are blinding. 300 people are clapping. And somewhere in that crowd, the man who said I'd be nothing without him is watching me shine. But let me take you back to where it all started, because you need to understand how a girl with two part-time jobs and a broken heart became the woman his world couldn't ignore. Charleston. 5 years ago. I was 26 and drowning. My boyfriend had just left me for someone more stable. My landlord wanted me out in 30 days. I was cashiering at a grocery store during the day and shooting photos for a local magazine at night, barely scraping together enough to eat. I wasn't depressed exactly. I was just tired of being invisible. That Tuesday afternoon, I ducked into a bookstore cafe to escape the rain. The place smelled like old paper and coffee grounds. I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu and found a corner table, scrolling through rejection emails from photography gigs I'd never land. That's when I saw him. A man sitting alone at the back table, staring at a cold cup of coffee, like it held answers he'd never find. He wore a simple black sweater. No flashy watch. No entourage. Just exhaustion carved into handsome features. Our eyes met. He smiled, not the kind that wants something, but the kind that recognizes something. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. You look like you're carrying the world, he said, nodding at my camera bag. I laughed bitterly. More like the world's carrying me to the dumpster. He gestured to the empty chair. Mind if I join your misery? That's how I met Adrian Costello. No grand entrance. No violins. Just two tired people sharing coffee that had gone cold. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about pressure I couldn't imagine, boardrooms, expectations, people who only saw him as a resource. I told him about rent I couldn't pay and dreams that felt foolish. He listened like my words mattered. Like I mattered. When I showed him my photography portfolio on my cracked phone screen, he stopped at one particular shot, an old oak tree by the river, its branches reaching toward water it would never touch. This one, he said quietly. How much? I thought he was joking. You want to buy it? His eyes met mine, and something in them made my chest tighten. You captured loneliness the way I feel it. That's rare. He paid me $300. Cash. Said it was the most honest thing he'd seen in years. I didn't know he was a billionaire. Didn't know his family name was printed on half the buildings downtown. Didn't know I'd just met the man who would become my husband and my greatest mistake. For 6 months, Adrian was my escape from reality. He'd show up at random times with takeout boxes and that tired smile. We'd sit in my cramped apartment, and he'd watch me edit photos while classical music played from his phone. He never mentioned his wealth. Never flaunted it. You remind me what real feels like, he whispered one night, his head on my lap as we watched the sunrise through my tiny window. Everyone else wants something from me. You just want me. I fell in love with his vulnerability. The way he'd trace my palm when he was anxious. How he'd close his eyes when I read poetry aloud. He felt like home in a world that had never given me one. The truth came out on a Saturday morning. We were walking through the historic district when a woman stopped us, some socialite I didn't recognize. Adrian Costello. I didn't expect to see you slumming it downtown. Her eyes raked over me like I was dirt on expensive shoes. Does your mother know you're? We're leaving, Adrian said coldly, pulling me away. That night, he finally told me everything. The real estate empire. The Forbes profile. The family legacy that stretched back 3 generations. He looked terrified, like I might run. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, he said. But everyone treats me differently when they know. You were the first person who saw me. Just me. I should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why he'd hidden such a huge part of himself. But I was 26 and stupid in love with a man who made me feel chosen. I don't care about your money, I told him, and I meant it. I care about this. Us. He kissed me like I'd saved his life. 3 months later, he proposed. Simple ring. Rooftop sunset. Words that promised forever. I said yes because I believed him when he said I was enough. I had no idea I was signing away my identity. The wedding was his mother's production, not ours. Crystal chandeliers, 500 guests I'd never met, a dress that cost more than my entire existence. I felt like a prop in someone else's fantasy. His mother, Vivian Costello, pulled me aside during the reception. Diamond earrings caught the light as she smiled, the kind of smile that cuts. "You look lovely, dear," she said, voice sweet as poison. "But remember, Costello women don't come from nothing. They become something by staying useful." Her words wrapped around my throat like silk wire. "I'm not trying to become anything," I replied carefully. "I just love your son." She patted my cheek. "How sweet. Just remember, love is a luxury we can afford. For you, it's an opportunity. Don't waste it by thinking you're equal to it." That should have been my first clue. That this family didn't see me as Adrian's wife. They saw me as his mistake that needed managing. If I'd known what those tired eyes were really hiding, I might have run that day. Would you marry someone whose family made you feel like you didn't belong? Drop your honest answer below. I want to hear your story. The mansion wasn't a home. It was a museum where I was the newest acquisition. 16 bedrooms. Staff who called me Mrs. Costello, but reported my every move to Vivian. Closets full of designer clothes I never picked out myself. A life so perfect it felt like suffocating in silk. Adrian left for the office at 6 every morning. Came home at 9 at night smelling like expensive cologne and stress. The man who once sat with me for hours discussing poetry now gave me distracted kisses and business calls that couldn't wait. "How was your day?" I'd ask over dinner. We ate in silence, served by people who wouldn't meet my eyes. Exhausting. Merger talks. You wouldn't understand the complexity. He'd pat my hand like I was a child who'd asked about calculus. I started suggesting things. Small things. Maybe I could help with the company's social media? Photograph events for the charity foundation? Use my skills for something besides looking pretty at galas? Adrian would smile. That patient, condescending smile that made me feel 2 inches tall. "Sweetheart, you don't need to work. That's the point. Just enjoy your life. You've earned it by being with me." Earned it. Like I was a pet who'd performed a trick. His PR advisor, Marcus, started vetting my friends. Called them image risks. My college roommate who bartended? Too working class. My photographer friend with a nose ring? Not Costello brand. I watched my entire world shrink to country club lunches with women who smiled with their mouths, but never their eyes. Who asked about my outfit, but never my thoughts. Who treated me like I was lucky to breathe their air. One afternoon, I tried to leave the estate alone. Just drive to the old bookstore where Adrian and I met. Remember what normal felt like. The head of security stopped me at the gate. "Mrs. Costello, Mr. Costello requests you take Charles as your driver. For safety." Safety. That's what they called surveillance. I went back inside. Climbed the grand staircase to our bedroom that felt like a hotel suite. Stared at myself in the mirror. Designer dress, professional makeup, dead eyes. I didn't recognize her anymore. That night, I tried talking to Adrian about it. Really talking. He was in his study, whiskey in hand, reviewing contracts. "I feel like I'm disappearing," I said quietly. "Like I'm not a person anymore. Just an accessory." He looked up, irritation flickering across his face. "You're being dramatic. Do you know how many women would kill for this life? I don't want what they want. I want to matter. I want to use my brain, my talent." "Your talent?" He laughed. Not cruel, but dismissive. Worse somehow. "Baby, you took nice pictures. That's not a career. That's a hobby. I'm building empires. There's a difference." Something cracked inside me. Something I didn't know how to fix. "I'm not asking to build empires," I whispered. "I'm asking to be treated like I'm more than decoration." He sighed like I was exhausting him. Stood up. Kissed my forehead. "You're emotional. Get some rest. We have the investors' dinner tomorrow. Wear the blue dress." He walked past me. Closed the bedroom door between us. I stood there in his study, surrounded by photographs of his achievements, magazine covers, groundbreaking ceremonies, handshakes with senators. Not a single photo of us. That was the night I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. I hadn't married a man. I'd married a system that measured my worth by how quiet I stayed. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Tell me in the comments. Sometimes knowing we're not alone is the only thing that keeps us sane. The coffee tray rattled in my hands. I was bringing it to Adrian's study, trying to be the good wife who anticipated his needs, hoping maybe small gestures would bridge the growing canyon between us. That's when I heard his voice through the door. Sharp. Business tone. The voice he never used with me anymore. She's good for image, Marcus. That's it. The investors love the narrative. Self-made billionaire marries ordinary girl. Proves he's down to earth. It's branding, not romance. I froze. My heart hammered so loud I thought he'd hear it through the mahogany. Marcus's laugh crackled through the speakerphone. And if she gets difficult? Wants more say in things. She won't. She's not built for this world. Besides, Adrian's voice dropped, casual cruelty wrapped in certainty. Where would she even go? She has nothing without me. No career, no connections, no money of her own. She's trapped and doesn't even know it. The coffee cup shattered against the saucer. Brown liquid splashed across the silver tray, across my trembling hands. The study door flew open. Adrian stood there, phone still in hand, face frozen between annoyance and calculation. For 5 seconds, we just stared at each other. Him trying to figure out how much I'd heard. Me trying to remember how to breathe. You weren't supposed to hear that, he said finally. Not an apology. A statement of inconvenience. Is that what I am? My voice came out broken. Branding? A prop for your image. He had the audacity to look irritated. Like I was the problem. Don't be dramatic. You're twisting my words. You said I have nothing without you. That I'm trapped. I said you're not built for this world. He stepped closer, voice dropping to that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. And you're not, baby. That's not an insult. It's reality. Do you think you could survive out there? Competing? Building something from scratch? You're sweet, but you're not. Not what? Smart enough? Strong enough? Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not for him. Not anymore. He sighed. Ran his hand through his hair like I was a problem he had to solve. Look, I'll make sure you're taken care of. Comfortable. But let's not make this harder than it needs to be. You wouldn't survive without me anyway. Those words landed like a physical blow. Knocked the air from my lungs. Shattered something fundamental in my chest. I'd heard people talk about the moment they stopped loving someone. I always thought it would be gradual. Gentle. But it wasn't. It was instant. Like a switch flipping off. I looked at this man. This stranger wearing Adrian's face. And felt nothing but cold clarity. You're right about one thing, I said quietly. I'm not built for your world. Because your world requires me to accept being treated like I'm worthless. And I'd rather have nothing than live like that. I turned to walk away. His hand caught my arm. Where do you think you're going? Anywhere but here. His grip tightened. Not painful, but possessive. With what money? What plan? You'll be back in a week when reality hits. Don't embarrass yourself by pretending you have options. I looked down at his hand on my arm. Looked back up at his face. So certain of my weakness. So confident in his control. Let go of me, Adrian. Something in my voice made him release me. I walked upstairs. Pulled out the battered suitcase I'd brought to this mansion. The only thing here that still felt like mine. Started packing. That night, I promised myself something. If he thought I couldn't survive, I'd make him choke on my success. Drop a fire emoji if you've ever had to walk away from someone who underestimated you. Your comeback story starts the second you choose yourself. $3,000. That's what I left with. Not jewelry. Not a suitcase of clothes. Just a crumpled envelope of cash I'd secretly saved from the allowance Adrian gave me every month, like I was a teenager who had to ask permission before buying her own shampoo. He thought I never noticed how he used money to control me. But every time I smiled and thanked him for the deposit, I was already planning my escape. The first night, I slept in my car. In a grocery store parking lot, under a flickering light that buzzed like a mosquito in my ear. I kept the engine off to save gas, but the cold crept in anyway. My hands shook so hard I could barely scroll through my phone. I cried until my chest felt hollow, until my sobs turned into hiccups, until I hated myself for being weak. There were moments that night I almost turned the key, almost drove back to that house with the marble floors and locked emotions. Not because I missed him, but because fear, when you're utterly alone, is a living, breathing monster. By sunrise, fear met its match.
Pride.
It wasn't loud or heroic, just a quiet, angry voice whispering, "Get up."
So I did.
I found a room above a bakery in the old part of town, a building that smelled like sugar and thyme. Mrs. Chun, the owner, had kind eyes and flour in her hair. She said she could use help in the mornings, shaping dough, mixing fillings, cleaning trays. I told her I could learn fast. She nodded, handed me an apron, and said if I worked hard, she'd cut my rent in half. That was enough. Every morning, at 4, I stumbled downstairs in clothes dusted white. The air was thick with the scent of yeast and cinnamon. I kneaded dough until my arms screamed, and the pain felt good, like proof that I wasn't broken beyond repair. While the city still slept, I found rhythm in the sound of metal trays clattering and ovens humming to life. The work was honest, humble,
Real.
During the day, I carried my old camera everywhere. The one thing I'd refuse to leave behind. Adrian used to mock me for it, called photography my cute little hobby. But it was more than that. It was how I saw the world, how I reminded myself it still had beauty. I walked the streets and took pictures of everything Adrian's money could never buy, weathered hands holding paper coffee cups, kids splashing in cracked fountains, an old couple sharing a sandwich on a park bench.
People who didn't pretend.
People with real stories written into the lines of their faces. At night, I uploaded the photos, added small captions. Tiny stories about ordinary lives that still shone. A woman whose garden survived a hurricane. A veteran who carved chess pieces from scrap wood. A widow who still wore her wedding ring 40 years after her husband died. Nobody noticed at first. A few likes, a kind comment, or two. My follower count hovered at 212 for weeks. Then one picture changed everything. Dorothy lived next door to Mrs. Chun. She was 80, sweet, and sharp on good days, foggy on others. One Sunday, she came in for bread and asked, almost shyly, if I'd take her portrait. "Before I forget what I look like," she said with a soft laugh that wasn't really a laugh. She had Alzheimer's, and she knew what was coming. We spent the afternoon in her small apartment filled with lace curtains and the faint smell of lavender. She showed me her wedding album, sepia photographs, soldiers in uniforms, a man with kind eyes who never made it home from Vietnam. She twisted the ring on her finger when she talked about him. 52 years, she whispered, and I still miss him every morning. I took a photo of that exact moment, black and white, her wrinkled hands holding the ring, the glint of gold against paper-thin skin. Her eyes filled with memories that hadn't yet faded. I posted it that night, wrote a short caption about love that refuses to die, and went to sleep without expecting anything. By morning, my phone was a storm of light. 17,000 notifications. Messages from strangers who said the photo made them cry, call their grandparents, hold their loved ones tighter. Someone wrote, "This is what love looks like after the fairy tale ends." Another said, "You made me remember my mother." Dorothy's story spread everywhere. News outlets shared it. People reposted it with hashtags about resilience, memory, and grace. And suddenly, my inbox was overflowing. Could I photograph their grandparents? Their corner store? Their life no one else found remarkable? For the first time since I'd left Adrian, I felt something other than pain. Purpose. So I said yes. Again and again. One photo shoot became 5. Then 20. I didn't charge much, just enough to eat, to save a little to prove I could stand on my own. Each person I photographed became a mirror, showing me what survival really looked like. A single mother who started a catering business from her kitchen. A man who opened a bookstore after corporate burnout nearly killed him. A teenager who turned her allowance into a nonprofit feeding kids at school. They were all rebuilding, all fighting to exist on their own terms, just like me. 6 months passed. My savings was thin. My meals were mostly ramen and coffee, but I was alive. I was me. Every night I'd sit in my tiny room, editing photos as rain drummed the window, and think about the woman I used to be. The one who flinched when Adrian sighed, who measured her worth by his moods. She was gone, burned away by heartbreak and hard work. In her place was someone new. Someone he could never own, never break, never silence again. If you've ever stood up after being knocked flat, if you've ever rebuilt yourself from the ashes of someone else's control, you already know this feeling. If you've ever fought your way back from rock bottom, comment Phoenix below. Because no matter how dark it gets, we rise. Always. I called it Phoenix Stories. Cheesy, maybe, but it felt right. Honest. The name came from a place deeper than branding. It came from every sleepless night, every time I'd thought the world had ended, and then somehow woke up anyway. It came from that part of me that refused to stay down. The tagline arrived at 3 a.m, when ideas always find me, half dream, half determination. From ashes we rise. At first, it was just me. One second-hand camera. One scuffed-up laptop. One rented room that smelled of bread, coffee, and ambition. The walls were cracked, the floor uneven, but it was mine. I specialized in what the agencies ignored, the stories that didn't sparkle. The ones that didn't fit in glossy magazines. Small business owners, single parents, old-timers chasing one last dream. People whose stories you could feel when you looked at their faces. I learned something early on. When the world gets too fake, real becomes gold. And real was all I had to offer. My first real breakthrough didn't come from a celebrity or a big brand. It came from Janet. She was 53, newly divorced, and starting a house-cleaning business after her husband drained their accounts and left her with nothing but debt and a beat-up sedan. She emailed me one night, her message full of hesitation. I can't afford fancy marketing, but I saw what you did for Dorothy. I thought maybe you'd help. I could almost hear her embarrassment between the lines. I'll do it, I wrote back. Pay me when your business takes off. Deal? Janet cried when I showed up with my camera. Not because she was sad, but because nobody had ever treated her like she was worth capturing. I photographed her cleaning a window while sunlight bounced off the glass and lit her face. No posing, no filters. Just strength.
Grit. Hope.
The caption I wrote told her story, how she was rebuilding from ashes one window at a time. She posted it on Facebook. And just like that, something caught fire. 6,000 shares in 3 days. People called, booked her services, left glowing reviews. Within a month, she had more clients than she could handle and hired 3 other women. When she came to pay me, she handed me triple the amount we'd agreed on. Tears in her eyes, she said, "You didn't just take pictures, you gave me back my dignity." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just photography. This was reclamation. This was giving voices to people the world had decided were invisible. Words spread faster than I could keep up. Community bulletin boards, online mom groups, neighborhood Facebook pages. Everywhere I looked, someone was telling someone else about that girl who takes photos that make you feel something. Soon, women started showing up at my door. Single moms rebuilding from scratch. Women over 50 who couldn't get hired because of their age. Widows figuring out who they were without Mrs. in front of their name. They didn't just want photos. They wanted to be seen. To be reminded that starting over didn't mean starting less. So I hired them. Not out of charity, out of kinship. Because I knew what it felt like to be underestimated, overlooked, written off. And slowly, Phoenix Stories grew wings. Within a year, we moved into a small office above a thrift store. There was paint peeling on the ceiling and a window that wouldn't close all the way, but we made it ours. 2 employees became 5. 5 became 15. We weren't just taking photos anymore. We were building narratives. Social media campaigns for local startups. Branding for small shops run by dreamers. Podcasts where women share their comebacks. And something incredible happened. Companies started paying attention. The big ones. The ones that once would have ignored me. They wanted that authentic tone, that raw emotion they couldn't manufacture in a boardroom. Money came slow at first, then suddenly all at once. Enough to pay fair wages. Enough to save. Enough to breathe without panic. By year 3, a local business magazine featured us on the cover. The headline read, "Phoenix Stories, the company built on second chances." I framed that article, not out of vanity, but as a reminder. Every time I doubted myself, every time imposter syndrome whispered that I didn't belong, I'd look at it and think, I built this. Not Adrian. Not his money. Not his shadow.
Me.
One morning, I stood in our new headquarters, a bright glass office overlooking downtown Charleston. The same city where I'd once slept in my car. The same streets I'd walked with blistered feet, camera slung over my shoulder, heart shattered but beating anyway. Now I stood tall. My reflection in the window was different, steadier. Behind me, my team buzzed around with coffee cups, laughter, and plans for the week. Women who'd once been told they were too old, too inexperienced, too broken. Now they were running departments, mentoring others, leading meetings. We were a family forged from survival, not perfection. Then my phone buzzed. An email. Gold letterhead. Elegant script. Costello Foundation Annual Gala. Honoring women in leadership. For a second, my stomach twisted. Costello. Adrian's family name. His world. His rules. I could almost hear his voice in my head, condescending, amused. You'd never make it without me. The irony nearly made me laugh. Almost. I hovered over the delete button, finger trembling. I could ignore it, pretend it didn't matter, keep my peace and my distance. But deep down, I knew what I needed to do. Because closure doesn't come from pretending the fire never happened. It comes from walking back into the ashes and realizing you're no longer afraid to burn. So I took a deep breath. Clicked RSVP. Yes. I didn't know what I'd say when I saw him again. Maybe nothing at all. Maybe silence would speak louder than any words. But one thing was certain, this time, he'd be the one watching me walk away. Tell me, would you go back to face the person who broke you? Or let your success speak for itself? The invitation sat on my desk for 2 weeks. Silver embossed. Costello Foundation Annual Gala. Honoring women in leadership. Every time I looked at it, my stomach twisted. Not from fear. From the delicious irony of it all. Adrian's Foundation. Honoring women. The same man who'd told me I wasn't built for his world now wanted to celebrate women who'd built their own. My assistant, Maria, a 52-year-old widow I'd hired when nobody else would, noticed me staring at it again. You should go, she said quietly. Not for him.
For you.
Show him what he lost. I don't need to prove anything to him anymore. Then prove it to yourself. That he doesn't have power over you anymore. She was right. Avoidance wasn't strength. It was just fear wearing a different mask. The night of the gala, I chose my outfit carefully. Not the most expensive dress. Not the flashiest jewelry. Just something that made me feel like myself. Emerald green, simple cut, confidence I'd earned through every sleepless night and small victory. When I walked into that ballroom, I felt eyes turn. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Is that her? She looks incredible. Phoenix Stories, that's hers? I heard she started with nothing. The validation felt good. Not gonna lie. But what felt better was knowing I didn't need it anymore. Then I saw him. Adrian stood near the bar, surrounded by men in expensive suits. He looked older. Tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying weight that money can't lift. Our eyes met across the room. His face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds, shock, calculation, then something I couldn't quite read. He excused himself from his group. Walked toward me with that purposeful stride I used to find attractive. Now, it just looked rehearsed. I didn't expect to see you here, he said. His voice still carried that undertone of control, like he owned every room he entered. I smiled.
Calm.
Unbothered. Oh, I was invited. Apparently, they're honoring women who built something out of nothing. Figured I qualified. He blinked. like he'd just been slapped with words instead of hands. Phoenix stories, he said slowly. That's you? Every single bit of it. Turns out I was built for this world after all. I just had to build my own. A muscle twitched in his jaw. I heard you've done well. Impressive. Thank you. I tilted my head. How's the real estate business? I heard there were some complications with the investors.
Direct hit.
His smile tightened. We're managing.
You know how it is.
Business cycles. Actually, I do know. Difference is, I built mine without crushing people to get there. The words hung between us like smoke. Other guests were watching now, pretending not to, but definitely listening. I should go, he said stiffly. Enjoy your evening. Oh, I will. That's the beautiful thing about earning your own success. You actually get to enjoy it. He walked away, and I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No pain. Just peace. That's how I knew I'd won. Have you ever run into someone who doubted you after you proved them wrong?
What did you say?
Drop it below. The Foundation's chairwoman, Catherine Wells, one of Adrian's biggest business rivals, approached me an hour later. She wore power like perfume. Miss Hart, I've been hoping to meet you. Your work with Phoenix Stories is remarkable. Exactly the kind of authentic leadership we need more of. We talked for 20 minutes. She asked about my journey, my philosophy, my plans. Every question felt like she was measuring me for something bigger. Then she dropped the bomb. We'd like to honor you tonight. The Rising Phoenix Award. For empowering women entrepreneurs who've overcome adversity. My heart stopped. Tonight? But I thought. The list changed last week. Your story embodies everything this award represents. Will you accept? I looked across the room. Adrian was watching us, jaw tight, champagne glass frozen halfway to his mouth. Yes, I said. I'll accept. 30 minutes later, I stood on that stage. Lights blazing. Cameras flashing. 300 people watching. And somewhere in that crowd, the man who said I couldn't survive was forced to witness me soar. Catherine handed me the crystal trophy. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's Rising Phoenix Award goes to a woman who transformed pain into purpose, who built an empire from ashes, who proved that the only permission you need to shine is your own. The applause was deafening. I stepped to the microphone, looked out at the crowd, found Adrian's face, pale, jaw clenched, eyes hollow.
Thank you, I began.
My voice didn't shake. I want to tell you something I learned the hard way. Sometimes people will tell you that you can't survive without them, that you're not smart enough, strong enough, worthy enough.
Pause.
Let it breathe. But what they really mean is, they can't imagine surviving your strength once you realize you never needed their permission to shine. The crowd erupted. Women stood. Men clapped. Even the waitstaff stopped to listen. I built Phoenix Stories for every woman who was told she was too much or not enough. For everyone who left something that looked perfect but felt like dying. For anyone who's been underestimated and used that as fuel. I held up the trophy. Light refracted through the crystal like fire. This isn't just mine. It belongs to every woman who chose herself when the world told her not to. We didn't survive. We transformed. And that's the difference. The standing ovation lasted 2 full minutes. When I walked off that stage, I passed Adrian in the crowd. He stood frozen, face unreadable. His empire was still vast. His money, still endless. But his control over me?
Gone. Completely.
That was the revenge. Not his ruin. My rise. If this moment gave you chills, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear they're stronger than they think. 3 months later, Adrian showed up at my office. No warning. No appointment. Just walked past reception like he still owned the world. Like showing up unannounced was still his right. Maria buzzed me. There's a Mr. Costello here to see you. Should I call security? Part of me wanted to say yes. Send him away the way he dismissed me. But curiosity won. Send him in. He looked different. Smaller somehow. The kind of shrinking that happens when arrogance runs out of places to hide. Dark circles under his eyes. expensive suit that couldn't hide the weight he'd lost. Nice office, he said, glancing around. You've done well. Is that why you're here? To tell me what I already know. He flinched. I came because I need advice. I almost laughed. You need advice? From me? The woman who wasn't built for your world. I deserve that. He sat without being invited, ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I used to find endearing. Now, it just looked desperate. The company's under investigation. Fraudulent accounting practices I didn't even know about. Investors are pulling out. My own board is turning against me. And you thought I'd what? Feel sorry for you.
No.
I thought you'd be honest with me. Everyone else is either lying or leaving. You're the only person who ever told me the truth. Silence stretched between us. Outside my window, the city buzzed with life I'd built without him. You want truth? I leaned forward. You built an empire on control and appearances. You surrounded yourself with people who feared you instead of respected you. And now you're shocked that foundation is crumbling? His face crumpled. I didn't know how to do it differently. Yes, you did. You just chose not to. You chose ego over humanity, power over partnership. You could have built something real. Instead, you built something hollow. Like what you've built. His voice cracked. You built something real, didn't you? Something that actually matters.
Yes.
Because I built it on respect. On lifting people up instead of stepping on them.
He stared at his hands.
I was wrong. About everything.
You didn't need me.
You never did. I just needed to believe you did because he stopped. Swallowed hard. Because I was terrified of what it meant that you chose to stay. Chose. I felt anger flare. Adrian, I didn't choose. I believed. There's a difference. I know. He looked up. Eyes red. I came here to apologize. Not because I think it'll fix anything, but because you deserve to hear it.
I'm sorry.
For treating you like property. For making you feel small. For being too much of a coward to see what I had. The apology landed strange. Too late to heal. Too genuine to dismiss. I appreciate that, I said quietly. But apologies don't erase damage. They just acknowledge it. He nodded. Stood. You became everything I pretended to be. And I hope, his voice broke. I hope you're happy. Really happy. The way I never let you be. He walked to the door. Stopped. For what it's worth. That speech at the gala. About not needing permission to shine? I haven't stopped thinking about it. Then he left. And I sat there, trophy on my shelf, empire around me, realizing something profound. Revenge through success isn't about them watching you win. It's about you finally being free. Sometimes closure comes quietly. Have you ever gotten an apology you stopped needing?
Tell me about it below.
Years blur when you're building something that matters. You forget the long nights, the cheap coffee, the deadlines that bleed into dawn. You stop counting the hours because the work itself becomes oxygen. That's what happened with Phoenix Stories. It stopped being a business. It became a heartbeat, a movement. We expanded to 6 cities, small offices tucked between bookstores and bakeries, places that smelled of creativity and second chances. We started a podcast where women share their comeback stories, the raw, unfiltered kind. We launched a scholarship fund for single mothers chasing business degrees, women who had dreams but no safety nets. We partnered with companies that weren't just performative about empowerment, but actually lived it, offering fair pay, flexible hours, real respect. Every milestone, every award, every time a woman stood behind a microphone to tell her truth, I remembered that night in the mansion. The coffee tray shaking in my hands. The laughter echoing off marble walls. The way Adrian looked at me like I was decoration, not a person. The moment my worth was reduced to branding. That memory could have crushed me. It could have become my cage. Instead, it became my compass. The blueprint for everything I refused to become again. Because here's what Adrian never understood. Asterisk, asterisk, pain isn't always destruction. Asterisk, asterisk, pain, if you hold it long enough and brave enough, turns into something sharper. Something useful. When you study it, When you let it teach you instead of define you, it becomes wisdom, purpose, power, asterisk, asterisk. And that's what I built Phoenix Stories from. Not success, not luck, but pain that refused to stay silent. I think about all the women who've walked through my doors since that first shaky beginning. Janet, who built her cleaning business into a local empire. Maria, my right hand, who once couldn't look people in the eye but now commands a boardroom like she was born to lead. The college dropout who runs our social media division with more brilliance than any marketing exec I've ever met. The 60-year-old widow who picked up a camera after her husband's death, now teaching our new hires how to capture truth through a lens. Every one of them had been underestimated,
Dismissed.
told they were too old, too young, too emotional, too late. Every one of them proved the world wrong. And somewhere in their victories, I saw my own reflection, the pieces of the woman I used to be, reshaped into something fiercer, freer. That's when I finally understood what Phoenix Stories truly was. Not a company, not even a movement. It was a rebellion, a living, breathing rebellion against a system that profits from convincing people they're not enough. If I had stayed in that mansion, I would have died quietly,
Slowly.
numb from comfort. Luxury that required silence is just another kind of prison. And I'd worn that collar long enough. Leaving wasn't the hard part. Becoming myself was. But that's the thing about ashes. They're proof you survived the fire. They're not the end of the story. They're the beginning of your rebuilding. I used to think my worth depended on who loved me, who approved of me, who said I was good enough. But I've learned something far more valuable. Asterisk, asterisk, your worth doesn't come from who claims you. It comes from who you become when you claim yourself. Asterisk, asterisk. The girl who married Adrian needed validation. She needed permission to take up space, to dream, to speak. The woman I am now, she gives those things to herself. People ask me if I regret marrying him, if I wish I'd seen the red flags sooner, walked away before it all burned. But honestly,
No.
that pain shaped me in ways comfort never could. It taught me resilience. It taught me to trust my own hands, my own instincts, my own fire. It taught me that survival isn't the goal, transformation is. Now, every time I hire someone, I see a piece of that old version of myself, the one who thought love meant shrinking, who believed safety was worth silence. And I get to tell them what nobody told me back then. You are enough. Exactly as you are. You don't need fixing. You need freedom. That's the legacy I want. Not wealth. Not fame. Not even revenge. Freedom. Freedom for every woman who's ever been told she's too much, or not enough. Freedom for the broken, the rebuilding, the rising. Because when one of us rises, we all do. If you've ever turned heartbreak into fuel, pain into purpose, if you've ever stood up from the wreckage of your old life and said, I'm still here, then you already know what I mean. You're a phoenix too. Comment your story below. Because your words, your scars, your strength might be the spark that helps someone else rise. Last month, the mayor's office called. I almost didn't answer. The number was unknown. And these days, I guard my peace like treasure. But something told me to pick up, and when I did, I heard the words that still don't feel real. They wanted to name the new Arts and Entrepreneurship Center after me. The Phoenix Center. A space for women to learn skills, start businesses, find community. A place for rebirth. The irony wasn't lost on me. There was a time I couldn't even afford gas money. Now a whole center would bear my name. Not because I'd married well or inherited wealth, but because I'd refused to stay broken. At the unveiling ceremony, the air buzzed with that hopeful hum only new beginnings have. The ribbon shimmered red and gold in the sunlight, and the city's brass band played something triumphant. I stood there, hands trembling slightly, as the curtain dropped to reveal the name etched into stone. The Phoenix Center. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I looked out at the crowd, faces of women, men, students, dreamers. Some I recognized from our programs. Others were strangers, but their eyes glowed with something familiar.
Belief.
Belief in second chances. Belief in rising. Belief in refusing to stay down. A reporter stepped forward, microphone in hand. Her voice was steady, but kind. "What kept you going after your divorce?" she asked. "When everything seemed impossible?" I paused. Not for effect, but because I wanted to answer truthfully. Words of power, and this one mattered. I thought back to that night, the coffee tray shaking in my hands, the laughter that made me feel invisible, the man who wants to find my worth by how quiet I could be. So I said, "Once, a man told me I couldn't survive without him, that I wasn't built for this world." And for a moment I believed him. But then I realized something. He wasn't describing me. He was describing his fear, his need for control, his emptiness. The crowd went still. You could feel it, truth landing heavy, deep. I looked straight into the camera lens. "So, I stopped trying to survive his world," I said. "I built my own. And in that world, everyone gets to be enough, exactly as they are." Then came the applause. Not polite clapping, but the kind of sound that starts in the chest. Cheering, whistling, shouting. People wiping tears they didn't expect. That wave of connection that reminds you, words can heal. After the ceremony, as the crowd began to scatter, a young woman approached me. Early 20s, nervous hands twisting the strap of her purse. Tears streaked her cheeks. "My boyfriend tells me I'm nothing without him," she whispered. "That I'll never make it on my own. I've been too scared to leave." I reached for her hands, cold, trembling, familiar. I knew that fear. I had worn it once like skin. "Listen to me," I told her softly but firmly. "The person who truly loves you will never make you feel small. They'll celebrate your growth, not fear it. And if leaving means losing everything except yourself, you leave, because yourself is everything." She broke down crying, right there in front of everyone. Hugged me tight, her shoulders shaking.
"Thank you," she sobbed.
"Thank you." I held her, and for a moment, everything else faded. The cameras, the speeches, the fancy plaques. That moment right there? That was the real legacy. Worth more than every dollar Phoenix stories ever made.
Because this was never about me.
It was about the people who needed to see that it was possible. That you could walk away from a life built on control and still find your way home, to yourself. The sun slipped lower, glinting off the glass facade of the Phoenix Center. Light scattered across the courtyard, tiny rainbows dancing on concrete. Hundreds of fragments, all from one source, all reflecting outward. That's what healing looks like. One spark becoming another. One voice inspiring the next. One act of courage rippling into something unstoppable. Adrian was right about one thing. I wasn't built for his world. Thank God. Because his world required me to be smaller, quieter, dimmer. And I was always meant to blaze. So here's what I want you to remember. If you're watching this right now, feeling stuck or small or trapped inside someone else's version of who you should be, listen carefully. You are not their story. You are not their control. You are not their fear dressed up as love. You are the author, the architect, the phoenix. And the moment you stop begging for space in their world and start building your own, that's when the magic begins. That's when you realize that revenge was never the goal. Rising was. Revenge isn't watching them fall. It's soaring so high they can't touch you anymore. My empire wasn't built on spite. It was built on self-respect. And yours can be too. If this story touched you, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our family here. Every week, we share real stories of people transforming pain into power. Drop a comment telling me what part hit you hardest, because your words might be the lifeline someone else needs tonight. And if you know someone who's standing on the edge, doubting their strength, ***, share this video. ***, let them see what rising looks like. Thank you for being here. For believing. For rising with me. Until next time, keep rising.